Please turn off the overhead light, she asked. I sat across from her in the dim light of the rented apartment on the outskirts of Kaluga, the only table lamp casting our elongated shadows on the wall. Outside it was raining, a fine October drizzle, the kind that turns the world into a blurred watercolor. The recorder lay between us on the coffee table, the red recording light pulsing like a tiny heart. Anna Ryabinina, 39 years old, former accountant, now a second-degree psychiatric disability recipient. The only one who returned from the forest that night in August of 2004. "Are you sure you want to do this?" I asked for the third time. Old, faded to a pearly sheen, quote to quote. Old, faded to a pearly sheen, quote two, she said finally. Her voice was quiet, but not weak. Quote three, I shook my head. Quote four, she raised her eyes, and I saw that they were dry, long since dried out. The rain intensified, drumming against the glass. She added, I found her through a former investigator who handled the case in 2004. Sergei Nikolaevich Pakhomov, 72 years old, stage 4 lung cancer. When I went to see him at the hospice, he could barely get out of bed. Quote 8, he asked, scrutinizing my press card. Quote 9. Quote 10, he laughed, a dry, rasping sound that turned into a cough. Quote 11, he leaned back against the pillow, staring at the ceiling. He trailed off. Pakhomov turned his head and looked at me. His eyes were clouded with morphine, but somewhere deep inside, a spark still flickered. He coughed again. He didn't finish. Find the girl. If she's still alive. She knows. He gave me her name, her address, and died 2 weeks later. How did you find me? Anna looked at me without fear, more with a weary curiosity, the way you look at a pesky insect. Through Pakhomov, the investigator. Sergei Nikolaevich? Something flickered across her face, almost a smile. He was kind. The only one who didn't look at me like I was crazy, or a murderer. Were you suspected? What do you think? She got up and went to the window. Her silhouette against the rain, thin, angular. 40 people disappeared. I was the only one who survived, in someone else's blood, with a knife in my hand. A knife? A ritual knife from the community. I didn't remember how I got it. I still don't. She pressed her palm against the glass. 3 days in the forest, 3 days without food, almost without water. When I came out to the village, the locals initially took me for a ghost, then for a murderer. They called the police. They wrestled me to the ground right on the road. I didn't resist. I didn't even understand where I was. What do you remember about that night? She didn't answer. She stood at the window for a long time, watching the rain. Quote 33, she asked suddenly. Quote 34, quote 35, quote 36, quote 37. She turned around. Quote 38. I felt a chill run down my spine, not from her words, from the way she said them, matter-of-factly, like a weather forecast. She returned to the armchair and sat down opposite me. She fell silent, gathering her thoughts. I didn't rush her. Do you know what a cult is? She asked finally. In general terms? No, you don't know. No one knows until they've been inside. She leaned forward and the lamplight fell on her face. I saw wrinkles, too deep for 39. No one has ever loved you. She swallowed. Love? Yes, real love, sincere love. They love you, really, unconditionally, the way no one has ever loved you. She swallowed. My mother brought me to the gates of light when I was 16. My father left when I was 5. My mother worked 3 jobs to feed us. I grew up alone, without friends, without attention, without everything. And suddenly, 40 people who look at you as if you're the center of the universe, as if you're special, chosen. And you believed them? Wouldn't you have? She gave a wry smile. At 16? When no one notices you? When you're a nobody? And then these people come along, telling you that you carry the light within you, that you're part of a grand plan, that soon, very soon, the world will change and you'll be among those who lead humanity to a new era. She fell silent. The rain outside subsided to a whisper. 3 years, she said. I lived in the commune for 3 years. I was happy for 3 years, truly happy, for the first time in my life. Her voice trembled. And then came August of 2004, and it all ended. What happened? She looked at me for a long time, intently, as if deciding whether I could be trusted. The teacher announced the date of the ascension, she finally said. August 23rd, the full moon. He said that on that night the gates would open, and those who were worthy would pass through them, into a world of light, into eternity. And you believed him? I wanted to believe him. She lowered her eyes. But something wasn't right. I could feel it. In the week before the ascension, the teacher changed. He became different, nervous, angry. He never used to raise his voice, but then he was shouting at everyone, especially at Marina. Who's Marina? His wife, his first disciple. She was... Anna hesitated, searching for the right words. She was the only one who could argue with him. And in the week before the ascension, she started asking questions, uncomfortable questions, about the money, about the plan, about what would happen if the gates didn't open. And what did the teacher say? He said her faith was weakening, that darkness had entered her heart. Anna clenched her hands into fists. And then he said that the ascension required a sacrifice, that someone had to stay behind to seal the gates from this side. I felt the hairs on the back of my neck stand on end. A sacrifice? He didn't say sacrifice. He said guardian, the one who would stay to guard the passage, forever. She looked up. And he chose me. The recorder kept running. The red light pulsed in the silence. Me, she repeated. The youngest, the quietest, the one who never asked questions. He said it was a great honor, that I should be grateful. And what did you do? She was silent for a long time. The rain outside intensified again. I agreed, she finally said. I said yes. I was ready to die for them, for the light, for the teacher, for my mother, who looked at me with such pride. Her voice broke. for the first time during the entire interview. And then came the night of August 23rd, and I realized that I wouldn't be the only one dying. She stood up, went to the window, pressed both palms against the glass. "Do you want to know what happened that night?" she asked, without turning around. "What happened to the 40 people who believed they were going to the light?" "Yes." "Then listen carefully." She turned around, and in her eyes I saw something I hadn't seen before. Not fear, not pain. Something ancient. Something I couldn't name. "Because I'll only tell this once, and when I'm done, you'll regret asking." She returned to the armchair, sat down, folded her hands in her lap. "But first, you have to understand who we were, where we came from, why we believed." She looked at the recorder. "Turn it off. That's enough for today. But tomorrow," her voice was firm, "come back tomorrow, at the same time, and I'll tell you how a 16-year-old girl from Podolsk ended up in a cult that promised her eternal life." She stood up, making it clear that the conversation was over. I turned off the recorder, put it in my bag, got up. At the door, I turned around. She was standing by the window, again pressing her palm against the glass. "Anna," I said, "why now? Why after 20 years?" She didn't turn around. She said quietly. I felt a chill. She turned around and smiled, the same smile I had seen in her eyes a minute ago. Ancient, incomprehensible. She opened the door, she said, and closed the door behind me. I didn't sleep all night. If you live that long. Those words kept spinning in my head like a broken record. I checked the lock on the door 3 times, drew the curtains, lay in the dark, listening to every rustle in the hotel corridor. Nonsense. She was just trying to scare me, testing me. Seeing if I'd run away, like others probably had. In the morning, I was standing at her door at exactly 9, as agreed. My hands were shaking slightly. From lack of sleep, I told myself. Only from lack of sleep. Anna opened the door immediately, as if she had been waiting behind it. "Quote 96, she said without surprise. Quote 97. She was wearing different clothes, a simple gray dress, her hair pulled back in a bun. Without makeup, she looked younger and older at the same time, like someone who had long since stopped pretending. She uttered the way believers pronounce the name of God, or the devil. She began, settling across from me. I nodded. Instead of sleeping, I'd been digging through archives all night. Former psychiatrist, worked at the regional clinic, license revoked in 91. Did you find out why it was revoked? No, the records are sealed. Anna smiled, a thin, joyless smile. Experiments. He conducted experiments on patients. Sensory deprivation, altered states of consciousness, group hypnosis. He was looking for, as he called them, keys to the light body. Officially, abuse of authority. Unofficially, 3 patients committed suicide after his therapy. She sipped her coffee, looking out the window. But you know what's the scariest part? He genuinely believed he was helping them, that he was opening a path to something higher. He wasn't a charlatan fleecing people for money. He was truly devout, in himself. My mother brought me to him in November of '99. Anna took out a cigarette but didn't light it, just twirled it in her fingers. She chuckled. Anna finally lit the cigarette. Her hands didn't tremble. And then my mother said that the teacher wanted to see me, that he'd seen me in a dream, that I had a special aura, that I should come. The first meeting with him, she paused, searching for the right words. Have you ever looked into someone's eyes and felt like they were seeing right through you? Not in a metaphorical sense, literally. Every thought, every fear, every secret hope. I shook my head. He was 52, tall, thin, gray hair down to his shoulders, beard, dressed simply, a white shirt, gray pants, no jewelry, no ostentation, but his eyes. She stubbed out the cigarette, even though it was barely halfway done. Gray, very light, almost transparent. When he looked at you, it felt like you were standing naked in the middle of the room. Not physically, worse, like he could see everything you were hiding, even from yourself. And what did he say to you at that first meeting? Anna was silent for a moment. He took my hands, like this, she showed me, cupping her palms together. He looked at me for a long time, and then he said, "You've felt all your life that you're different, that you don't fit in, that the people around you are like behind glass. You thought something was wrong with you. But you were wrong. There's nothing wrong with you. You just see more than they do." She looked at me. Do you understand? He told me exactly what I'd wanted to hear my whole life. Not, "You're strange." Not, "You're a difficult child." Not, "You need to be like everyone else." He said, "You're special, and that's good." Classic manipulation, I said. He was a psychiatrist. He read people professionally. Yes, I know that now. But then, she spread her hands. I was 16. My father had left. My mother was constantly searching for something outside the home. I was an outcast at school. And suddenly there was a person who said that I was exactly the way I was supposed to be, that I didn't need to change, that I was already perfect. He never shouted, Anna continued, never gave orders. His voice was soft, like honey. He spoke as if he were sharing the greatest secret with you, as if you were the only person worthy of hearing it. She stood up, went to the window. Do you know how they recruit people into cults? Not with threats, with love. The kind of love you've never known. Unconditional, all-consuming. You arrive, and they hug you. They smile at you. They listen to you for hours. They tell you that you're important, that the community is incomplete without you, that you're part of something great. Love bombing, I said. I've read about it. Reading about it is one thing. Experiencing it is another. She turned around. For the first month, I came for the weekends. Then I started staying for a week. Then I dropped out of school. My mother was happy. We were finally together. We were a family. The teacher became the father we both never had. How did he explain his teachings? Anna returned to the table, poured more coffee. The light body. He said that inside every person there's a second body, made of pure light. It's sleeping. It's locked in a cage of flesh, fears, attachments. But it can be awakened. And then what? Ascension. She pronounced the word almost tenderly. Transition to another level of existence. He said that people are pupae, larvae, and the light body is a butterfly. You just need to hatch. And how were you supposed to do that? Practices, meditations, fasts, sensory deprivation. He'd equipped a special room, completely dark and soundproof. You'd lie there for hours, sometimes days, learning to hear your inner light. She paused. And rituals, simple at first, communal chants, circle dances, nocturnal vigils, then more complex. What do you mean, more complex? Anna looked at me for a long moment. That's for next time. Today, we're only talking about him. Did he believe what he preached? The question blurted out. Anna considered it. Yes, that's the horror of it. You can expose a charlatan, catch a fraud. But a person who sincerely believes he's leading you to salvation, how do you expose faith? She took a photograph from a desk drawer, old, faded. She held it out to me. The picture showed a group of people in white robes in a clearing. In the center was a tall man with gray hair. He was looking directly at the camera. And even in the old photo, even after 20 years, his eyes. I felt a chill run down my spine. Keep it, Anna said. It's the only photograph I have. I've kept it all these years. I don't even know why. Anna, I said, setting the picture down. You said you saw him last week in the shopping mall. She nodded. But if he was there in the forest that night, how could he have survived? Anna smiled, the same smile as yesterday, inscrutable. And who said he was there? I froze. But 39 bodies. 39, she repeated. There were 40 of us. 39 bodies were found. I survived. Do the math. 40 minus 39 minus her. His body wasn't found? His body wasn't found, Anna confirmed. The investigation concluded that he'd been torn apart by animals, or that he'd gone into the forest and died there, or that his body simply wasn't discovered. The forest is large. She leaned forward. But I know the truth. I saw him that night. I saw what he did. And I saw him leave. Leave? Where to? Into the forest, calmly, without looking back. She stood up. He's returned to finish what he started. And I think, she paused, I think he's come back for me. I left her apartment at noon. My head was buzzing. In my pocket was a photograph of a man who should have died 20 years ago. It was overcast outside, drizzling. I took out my phone to call a taxi and froze. On the opposite side of the street stood a man, tall. Gray hair down to his shoulders. He was looking at the windows of Anna's apartment. Then he slowly turned his head and looked at me. I blinked. A bus drove past. When it had passed, there was no one on the sidewalk. I took out the photograph, looked at the face of Teacher Seraphim, and realized that I couldn't remember the face of the man I'd just seen. Only the eyes, gray, light, almost transparent. I didn't tell Anna about the man on the street. Maybe because I wasn't sure myself about what I'd seen. Maybe because I was afraid of her reaction. Or maybe, and this thought was the most frightening of all, because a part of me wanted to understand what I was getting into first. I came to the third meeting with a temperature, 37.2, nothing serious, but my head was buzzing, and the world seemed slightly blurred around the edges. Anna noticed immediately. "You're sick." "A cold, it's nothing." She shook her head and went into the kitchen. Community. I took the cup. My hands were community. I took the cup. My hands were shaking slightly, not from fear, from the fever. "Tell me about her, about your mother." Anna sat down opposite me. Today she looked different, softer somehow. Or maybe she was just tired of keeping her guard up. "Lyudmila Viktorovna Ryabinina," she said, as if reading from a report. "Born in 1958. Higher education, philology faculty of Moscow State University. Worked as a teacher of Russian language and literature at school number 17 in the city of Shchelkovo. Divorced since 1993. Those are the facts. What was she like?" Anna was silent for a long time. It was raining outside, for the third day in a row, as if autumn had decided to make up for lost time. "She was lost," Anna finally said. "All her life. I only realized it later when I grew up. When I started asking questions that I hadn't thought to ask when I was 16. She stood up and went to the window. Raindrops crawled down the glass, and their shadows slid across her face like tears. "My mother was born into a family of a party official. My grandfather was a staunch communist, one of those who genuinely believed. Not a careerist, not an opportunist, a true believer. Only his God had a different name." She turned around. "Do you understand what I mean?" I nodded. I took a sip from my cup. The hot tea burned my throat, but a warmth spread through my chest. Anna returned to the table but didn't sit down. She leaned her hands on the back of the chair. And then she started searching. Searching for what? Everything. Answers, meaning, a God, any God who would agree to accept her. She listed them off, bending her fingers. First, the Orthodox Church, for 6 months. Then some personal growth courses. Then the Hare Krishnas, not for long, she didn't like the singing. Then a healer from Malakovka who healed with her hands. Then astrology. Then, I get it. "No," Anna said sharply. "You don't get it. You think silly woman looking for adventure. But it wasn't like that. She was looking for a home, a place where she would be accepted, where they would tell her that she hadn't lived her life in vain, that her suffering had meaning." She sat down. The teacher gave her that. Mom brought me to the community in November of '99, but she herself had come there earlier, in the spring of that year. For 8 months, she lived a double life, a teacher by day and a student of Seraphim in the evenings and on weekends. "Didn't you notice any changes?" Anna smiled bitterly. "I noticed. I just didn't understand what they meant. Mom became happy. For the first time in many years. She sang while making breakfast. She laughed. She looked at me as if she really saw me. And that seemed like a good sign.
Of course. I was 16, I was lonely and unhappy, and my mom suddenly turned into the person I had always wanted to have around. Warm, attentive, loving. She fell silent, the rain outside intensified.
I remember the evening when she first spoke about the teacher. We were having dinner. She had made my favorite borscht, even though she usually only made it for holidays. And suddenly she said, "Anya, I want to introduce you to an amazing person. He's changed my life. He can change yours, too." "What did you say?" I asked, "Is he your new boyfriend?" Anna laughed quietly, a dry, joyless laugh. Mom was so embarrassed. She blushed like a girl. She said, "No, what are you talking about? He's a spiritual mentor. He helps people find their way." And she added, I remember it verbatim, "He saw you in a dream, Anechka. He said you're special, that you have a gift." Classic recruitment. Yes, I know that now. Back then, no. Back then I only heard one thing. I'm special. Someone important thinks I'm special. Not my mom, who's obligated to think that. Not the teachers who don't give a damn about me. But someone who saw me in a dream, who knew about me even though we had never met. She looked up at me. "Can you understand that? What it's like to be a 16-year-old girl who's been abandoned by her father, who's ignored by her classmates, who cries into her pillow every night because she feels invisible? And then suddenly find out that someone sees you, that you're not a nobody, that you're special." I was silent. I understood all too well. I agreed immediately. I didn't even ask who this person was, where we were going, what he taught. I didn't care. I just wanted someone else to look at me the way my mom looked when she talked about him. The first few months were magical. I can't think of another word for it. Anna spoke more freely now, as if a dam had finally cracked. The community was located in a former pioneer camp near Shilkova. Several buildings, a dining hall, an assembly hall. It was cold there in the winter, but it didn't matter. We kept each other warm. How many people lived there permanently? At that time, about 30. But many only came on weekends, like my mom and I. The teacher said that the world wasn't ready for a complete break yet, that we had to be light in the darkness, live among ordinary people, but carry the knowledge within us. What knowledge? Anna shook her head. It's hard to explain. The teacher never gave ready-made answers. He asked questions. He made you think. Search. For example, why are you afraid of death? That was his favorite question. He asked it to every newcomer, and he listened to the answer attentively without interrupting. And then he would say, "What if there is no death? What if what you call death is just a door, a transition from one room to another?" Standard esotericism. Maybe. But he said it in such a way. You see, he didn't preach. He talked with everyone, personally, individually. He remembered everything, names, stories, fears, dreams. He knew that my father had left when I was 10. He knew that I wrote poetry and didn't show it to anyone. He knew that I was afraid of the dark. Your mom told him. Of course, I understand that now. Back then it seemed like he just saw, right through me, as if I had glass skin and he could read everything inside.
She stood up, walked across the room. Mom blossomed in the community. Literally. She looked 10 years younger. The teacher appointed her Keeper of the Word. She was in charge of the library and activities with the children. She had a purpose, a mission, people who valued her. And you? I was a child of light. That's what they called the youth. There were 7 of us, from 14 to 19. The teacher said we were the future, that our parents had created the old world, and we would create the new one. Sounds like typical teenage outreach, giving them a sense of importance. Yes, Anna agreed. Manipulation, I know. But back then it felt real. We would gather in the evenings, talking about life, about death, about love, without mockery, without irony, seriously, sincerely. Do you know the last time you had a conversation like that? A real, honest conversation about what matters? I didn't answer. I knew she was right. At school, they thought I was weird. In the community, I was special. There they listened to me. There my poems were read aloud, and adults said I was talented. There Mom hugged me every night and told me she loved me, that she was proud of me. Her voice trembled. Do you understand now why I didn't leave? Why no one left? But something changed, I said. Otherwise we wouldn't be sitting here. Anna returned to the table. She sat down, folding her hands in front of her. I noticed that her knuckles were white. It did change. In the summer of 2003, a few weeks before the ritual. What happened? The teacher started talking about ascension. She pronounced the word in a way that made me hear the capital letter. Before, he taught that death was a transition, that the soul is immortal, that we live many lives, ordinary things that millions of people believe. But that summer, he started saying something different. What exactly? That the transition could be made consciously, all together. That there is a moment, a special moment when the stars are aligned, when the boundary between worlds thins. And if at that moment you gather in the right place, say the right words, perform the right actions, you can transition. The entire community, not die, ascend. I was writing, trying not to show how cold I felt inside. Did your mother believe it? Mom. Anna hesitated. Mom was happy. She said, finally, Anechka, finally we'll be together forever, you, me, and all our brothers and sisters, in a world where there is no pain, no loneliness, no death. And you? Anna was silent for a long time. The rain outside the window had stopped, but the sky remained gray, heavy. I wanted to believe, she finally said. I really wanted to, but something inside, something resisted. A small voice that said, this is wrong, this is dangerous, you need to run. Why didn't you listen to it? She looked up at me, and I saw in her eyes the 16-year-old girl who, 20 years ago, stood before an impossible choice. Because then I would have had to leave my mother. As I was leaving, Anna called out to me in the doorway. Wait! I turned around. She was standing in the hallway, hugging herself. Yesterday night I had a dream. The first time in 20 years, not that dream, a different one. What was it? Mom. She was standing in a clearing in the forest, smiling, and she said, quote, 213.
I felt the hairs on my arms stand on end. "Who's back?" Anna didn't answer. She just looked at me, with the same look she had on the first day. The look of a person who knows something she shouldn't know. I went outside. The rain had stopped, but the sidewalk glistened with water. There was no one on the opposite side of the street. But on the wet asphalt, directly opposite Anna's window, I saw footprints. Large, male, barefoot. They led from the wall of the house to the edge of the sidewalk and stopped. I didn't sleep for 3 nights. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw those footprints, barefoot, on the wet asphalt, stopping in nowhere. A rational explanation existed. Of course it existed. A homeless person, a drunk, anyone who took off their shoes, stood there, and left. The footprints dried unevenly. Part of them disappeared earlier. I repeated this to myself like a mantra. It didn't help. On the 4th day, Anna called herself. "Are you ready to hear about Mark?" Her voice sounded different, firmer, as if she had made a decision. "Mark?" "Mark Chernetsov, Seraphim's right-hand man." A pause. "The one who turned the community into what it became in the end." The apartment looked different. Anna had moved the furniture. The armchair was now facing away from the window. The curtains were completely drawn, even though it was daytime. "You saw something," she said instead of a greeting, not a question. I hesitated. "Footprints, on the asphalt. Probably just barefoot?" I nodded. Anna slowly sank into the armchair. Her hands, I noticed only now, were trembling slightly. "He's come to me 3 times in these 20 years. Every time before I decided to speak. The first time when I tried to write to the newspaper in 2005, the second when I agreed to a documentary in 12. The producer died a week later, heart attack, 38 years old, perfectly healthy." "Anna, I know how it sounds." She looked up at me. "But you asked why I was silent for 20 years. This is why." I sat down across from her. I took out my recorder. My hands weren't cooperating. I had to press the button twice. "Tell me about Mark Chernetsov." "He appeared in the spring of 2000, 3 months before the end." Anna spoke slowly, weighing each word. "Before him, the community was gentle. Yes, we lived by Seraphim's rules. Yes, we believed in his teachings. But no one was held by force. People left, rarely, but they did. Seraphim said, quote, 214, quote. She smiled bitterly. And then Mark arrived. Who was he? A former Special Forces soldier, Chechnya, the first campaign. Something happened there. He never talked about it, but I saw him wake up at night, screaming, calling someone's name. How did he find the community? Seraphim found him in a psychiatric clinic in Podolsk. Mark was there after... She hesitated. After an attempt. Seraphim went there sometimes, looking for lost souls, people who had despaired, who were looking for anything to cling to. I remembered Pakomov's file. There was something about Listochkin's connections with medical institutions. Mark was broken, Anna continued. Completely. I saw people like that later in rehabilitation centers. Post-traumatic stress disorder, survivor's guilt, all that. Seraphim gave him what he was looking for. What was that? Purpose, meaning, redemption. She got up, went to the window. She pulled back the curtain an inch, looked out at the street. Mark believed. Not like us, we believed in love, in light, in unity. Mark believed in a mission, that Seraphim was truly a prophet, that the end of the world was real, that only the chosen would be saved. And Seraphim? Anna turned around. That's the thing. I still don't know if Seraphim himself believed what he was saying. The first few months in the community, I thought he did. He was sincere, kind. But when Mark appeared, something changed. The first thing Mark did was establish a perimeter. Anna returned to her chair. Her voice became quieter. We lived in a former pioneer camp. There was a fence, but it was symbolic. Children climbed over it when they wanted to go to the forest. Mark repaired the fence, put up a gate, started guarding at night. Seraphim allowed it? Seraphim said, quote, 216, quote, at the time it sounded reasonable. The 90s, you remember. Gangsters, lawlessness. We were grateful. She paused. And then Mark started, quote, 217, quote, us from each other. In what sense? He introduced rules, not in Seraphim's name, in his own. Anna looked at her hands. He divided us. Anna looked at her hands. He divided us into, quote, 218, quote, and, quote, 219, quote, those who had been in the community for a long time, who had proven their loyalty, pure. Newcomers, impure. The impure were not allowed to talk to the pure without Mark's permission. And you? I was a special case. Her lips twisted. Seraphim said that I was marked, that he had seen me in a dream long before my mother brought me to the community. Mark looked at me differently than at others. How? A long silence. Like a threat. In May of 2000, Seraphim announced the prophecy. Anna said the word as if it burned her lips. He gathered everyone in the main building. 43 people. 3 had left a month before. Mark hadn't had time to stop them. Seraphim was different. I had never seen him like that. Like what? Possessed. His eyes. She shook her head. Have you ever seen a person in a manic episode? I saw it later in hospitals. The same gleam, the same absolute certainty. She swallowed. He said that he had received a revelation, that on August 18th, 2000, on the day of the solar eclipse, the gates would open, the real gates, between this world and the next. And what needed to be done? Ascend. Anna almost spat out the word. He said that our bodies were cells, that the soul could not rise to the light while it was tied to the flesh, that at the moment of the eclipse the boundary between worlds would fin, and we could pass through. I felt a chill run down my spine. He was talking about mass suicide? No, that's the thing. Anna leaned forward. He was talking about transformation, about our bodies changing. That we wouldn't die. We would be transformed, become light. It was madness, but she broke off. But he was so convincing, so sure. And Mark stood next to him and looked at us, at each of us, and in his gaze there was such faith. Anna covered her face with her hands.
My mother was crying with happiness. She hugged me and said, quote, 221, quote. After the announcement, everything changed. Anna was speaking almost in a whisper now. Mark took over the preparation. He called it, quote, 222, quote. We fasted, meditated for 6 hours a day. Mark personally checked everyone, asked questions, looked into their eyes, looking for, quote, 223, quote. What happened to those who doubted? Isolation. Mark said it was, quote, 224, quote, to prevent doubt from spreading, so they could, quote, 225, quote, themselves in solitude. She paused. Vitalik Sorokin, he was 22.
He joined the community a year before me. He said he wanted to leave. He wanted to see his mother before August 18th. Mark took him to the basement of the main building. Vitalik spent a week there.
What did they do to him?
I don't know. Anna shook her head. When he came out, he was smiling. He said Mark had helped him see the light. But his eyes, there was nothing in his eyes. Absolutely nothing. I turned off the recorder. I needed a break. Anna, I said cautiously, do you realize you're describing a classic totalitarian cult setup? Isolation, information control, punishment for dissent? Of course I realize it. She looked at me wearily. Now I do. Back then, no. Back then I saw a family preparing for a great event. I saw people who loved me and wanted to protect me from the, quote, 227. She stood up, went to the dresser, took something out of a drawer. I saved something. She held out a folded piece of paper, yellowed with frayed edges. I unfolded it. A drawing in pencil, a clearing in the woods surrounded by trees. In the center, a circle of human figures. Above them, something like a funnel leading into the sky. And in that funnel, I couldn't understand what it depicted. The lines formed something, but my brain refused to interpret it. Seraphim drew this, Anna said, 3 days before August 18th. He said it was what he saw in a dream. I looked at the drawing. Weights. Anna took the drawing from my weights. Anna took the drawing from my hands. Seraphim said we wouldn't just ascend. He said someone would meet us. Someone who had been waiting for a very long time. She put the paper back in the drawer. Mark believed in it more than anyone. He said that in Chechnya, when he was dying, he saw this creature. It told him he would survive, that he had a purpose. Anna turned to me. Mark didn't just believe in the prophecy. He knew it would come true, because for him, it already had once. I left at dusk. On the landing, Anna stopped me by the sleeve. Next meeting, in a week, she said. I need time. Okay. And one more thing. She lowered her voice. The tracks you saw, they appeared before every one of my interviews, before every attempt to tell the story. Anna, I'm not saying it's Mark. She looked me in the eye. I'm saying I don't know what it is, but it's real, and it doesn't want me to talk. She let go of my sleeve. Be careful. I was walking to my car when my phone vibrated. A message from an unknown number. One word. Vitalik. And an address. In Podolsk. I stopped in the middle of the sidewalk.
read the message 3 times. Vitalik Sorokin. The one Mark kept in the basement for a week. The one who came out of there with empty eyes. Was he alive?
I looked at the windows of Anna's apartment. The lights were already off. On the opposite side of the street, in the shadows between the streetlights, something moved. I blinked. Empty. Only the wind was driving fallen leaves across the asphalt. But as I got into the car, I thought I heard footsteps, barefoot, on the wet asphalt. Vitalik Sorokin turned out to be not a man, but a shadow of one. The address led me to a 5-story building on the outskirts of Podolsk, one of those built in the 70s and never painted since. The entrance smelled of cats and boiled cabbage. On the 3rd floor, I found the right door, covered in imitation leather, with the number torn off. A man of about 45 opened the door, although according to the documents he should have been 39. Gray-haired, with trembling hands and a gaze that constantly slipped somewhere behind my shoulder. "You're a journalist?" His voice was hoarse, cracked. "Come in." An old television, running without sound. An old television, running without sound. "How did you know I was looking for information?" I asked. Vitalik smiled crookedly. "She told me." "Who?" "Kira." I froze. "Kira Dombrovskaya? But she died." "Yes." He sat down on the sagging sofa, hugged himself. "But she comes. She comes every night." I slowly lowered myself into the armchair opposite him. It was cold in the room, even though the radiators were on. "Tell me about her." Vitalik spoke for 3 hours. About Kira Dombrovskaya, a 23-year-old student from the philology faculty who joined the community a year before Anna. About how she became a, quote, 230, quote, for the newcomers, meeting them, explaining the rules, helping them adapt. She was real. Vitalik looked into the empty corner of the room. "The only real one among us. The others believed, or pretended to believe. But Kira, she doubted. And she didn't hide it. Why did she stay then? She was afraid." "Of what?" He finally looked at me. "The same thing everyone was afraid of. That outside, there was nothing. That without the teacher, we are nothing. That the love they gave us was the only real love in our lives." I remembered Anna's words, the recruitment mechanism. Not threats, belonging. Underscore, underscore, quote, underscore, 231, underscore, 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 I said. Underscore, underscore, quote, underscore, 232, underscore, underscore, underscore. Vitalik flinched. His hands trembled more violently. He swallowed. Sensory deprivation, a method for which Lostachkin lost his license in '91. Vitalik closed his eyes. He fell silent. The next morning I called Anna. A long pause. I heard Anna take a sharp breath. Quote, 244, she said finally. She was waiting for me in the kitchen. A cup of cold tea sat before her, untouched. Anna began without preamble. She was looking out the window, but I understood. She wasn't seeing the Kaluga courtyard, but a clearing in a forest outside Moscow 20 years ago. We were woken up at 4 in the morning. Mark was walking through the barracks, knocking on doors, saying, "Today, the teacher said, today." Did everyone know what was going to happen? We thought we knew. Anna gave a bitter smile. Ascension, transition to the light. The teacher explained it beautifully. We would leave our physical bodies like a butterfly leaves its cocoon. Our souls would merge with the source. No pain, no fear, only light. But you were afraid. I was 19. She turned to me. Of course I was afraid. But fear seemed a sign of weakness, proof that I wasn't pure enough, that there was still too much darkness in me. She stood up, walked to the window. We spent the whole day preparing. Meditations, cleansing rituals, fasting. Mark was checking the perimeter. He was afraid someone would run away. The teacher locked himself in his room, communicating with the source. And Kira? Anna pressed her palm against the glass. Kira found me afternoon. She took me behind the far barracks to a place where we couldn't be heard. Anna. Kira held her by the shoulders, and her hands were shaking. Listen to me carefully. What's wrong? Kira looked around. Her face was pale, with dark circles under her eyes. I saw, she whispered. At night, I saw what Mark was bringing into the forest. What? Jerry cans. Kira's voice was breaking. Quote 265. Anna felt a chill crawl down her spine. Quote 266. Quote 267. Kira almost shouted in a whisper. Quote 268. Anna took a step back. Kira grabbed her hand. They stood facing each other, breathing heavily. Somewhere in the distance, Mark was calling people to evening meditation, Kira said. Kira looked away. She stumbled. Kira squeezed her hand so hard it hurt. There were tears in Kira's eyes. Promise you'll leave? Anna was silent. Promise? I don't know. Kira closed her eyes. When she opened them again, there was a strange emptiness in them. Then remember one thing. If something goes wrong, run. Don't look back. Don't try to save anyone. Just run. What about you? What about Mom? Kira didn't answer. She just hugged her, tightly, desperately, and whispered in her ear. Then she pulled away and left. Anna watched her go. It was the last time she saw Kira alive. Anna fell silent. I waited, not daring to break the silence. She said finally. She turned to me, and in her eyes I saw 20 years of guilt. Anna slowly sat back down at the table. She shook her head. Her voice broke. I looked at her, at this woman who had carried a burden for 20 years. A burden that could crush anyone. Quote 303, she said quietly. Quote 304. Quote 305. She didn't answer. Outside it was beginning to get dark. The streetlights weren't on yet, and in that twilight between day and night, it seemed to me that I saw a silhouette on the opposite side of the street, a girl in white. She stood motionless, looking at the apartment windows. I blinked, and she was gone. Quote 306. Quote, Anna asked. I turned to her. She was looking in the same direction as me. Anna whispered. Anna didn't answer, but I already knew. A 23-year-old philology student, an older sister, the one who tried to save at least one soul, and perhaps succeeded. Kira Dombrovskaya. She was waiting, and it seemed to me that she was waiting for me. Investigator Tara Skritsenko lived in the village of Kradovo, in a house that remembered Khrushchev's thaw. The wooden fence was leaning, the apple trees in the garden had gone wild, and a large ginger cat sat on the porch, looking at me with lazy disdain. I found him through the Ministry of Internal Affairs pension database. An acquaintance from the archives owed me a favor. Gritsenko agreed to meet immediately, without any persuasion, as if he was expecting me. He opened the door before I could knock. He was over 70, but he moved easily, with military precision. Gray mustache, heavy hands, the gaze of a man who had seen enough not to be surprised by anything. He smiled wryly. We sat down in the kitchen, oilcloth on the table, geranium on the windowsill, a ticking cuckoo clock. An ordinary house of an ordinary pensioner. Only the folder on the table, yellow, worn, with a faded handwritten inscription, stood out. Gritsenko placed his hand on the folder. He was silent for a long time, stirring sugar in his tea. He looked up at me. He opened the folder. He pulled out a photograph, black and white, grainy. I saw a girl, almost a child, sitting on a chair in an office, empty gaze, tangled hair, dark stains on her clothes. He hesitated. He pulled out sheets of paper from the folder, covered in small handwriting. I took the sheets. My hands were shaking. It was Vitalik, I think. He tried to run, but Mark caught him, hit him. Vitalik fell. Don't be afraid. This isn't death. It's a birth. I wanted to run, but my legs wouldn't move. Like in a dream when you try to run but can't. Then I heard a voice, a woman's voice, behind me. Anya, run! Now! It was Kira. She grabbed my hand and dragged me towards the trees. I didn't understand what was happening. Everything was like in a fog. People were shouting, or singing. I couldn't make it out. We ran. Branches whipped my face. Kira pulled me along. She was saying something, but I couldn't hear. My ears were ringing. Then she stopped. You're on your own from here. Quote 333. Go east. You'll reach a village by dawn. What about you? She didn't answer. She just turned around and went back. To the clearing. I wanted to stop her, wanted to shout, but I couldn't. My voice was gone. The last thing I saw was her white dress between the trees. Then, darkness. The next thing I remember is walking along a road. Sun. Hot. Something heavy in my hand. A knife. Where did I get it? I don't know. 3 days. I don't remember 3 days, but sometimes, at night, I hear them. They're singing, all 40 of them, and Mom is among them. I put the papers down. Gritsenko was watching me, waiting for my reaction. Did you find the clearing? I asked. We did. He took out another photograph. 2 days after her testimony. The picture showed a forest clearing, trampled grass, dark stains on the ground. Blood? A lot of blood. Liters of it. But not a single body. He tapped the photograph. 42 people. Vanished. Just blood left. And this. The next picture. A pile of white fabric. Clothing. Dozens of dresses and shirts heaped together. They undressed before whatever it was. All of them. The clothing is clean, not a drop of blood.
How is that possible? Grisenko closed the folder.
I've been in the force for 40 years. I've seen everything. Maniacs, serial killers, ritual murders, but nothing like this. He shook his head. The experts said the blood belonged to at least 30 different people. DNA confirmed it, members of the community. But no bodies, not a single one. We combed the forest within a 20-kilometer radius. Dogs, helicopters, divers in the lakes. Nothing. That's why the case was classified? That's why. A week later, people from Moscow arrived. No uniforms, but with IDs that made our boss's hands tremble. They took everything. Evidence, protocols, photographs. They took the girl, said she was going to a specialized clinic. We were ordered to keep quiet, signed non-disclosure agreements.
But you kept copies.
He smirked. I told you, I'm cautious. He paused. And one more thing. The girl, Anya, before they took her away, she asked me for one thing.
What?
Find Kira, she said. She went back for them. She wanted to save them. Grisenko rubbed his eyes. I looked, unofficially, after the case was closed. Kira Dombrovskaya, 23 years old, a philology student at Moscow State University, went missing in August of 2001. Her parents filed a report, but it was merged with the general case, and then classified. He stood up, walked to the window. You know what's the scariest thing? I actually found something in that clearing, personally, before the Muscovites took everything.
What?
He didn't answer immediately. He took something small out of his pocket, wrapped in a cloth. A silver ring, thin, with an engraved inscription. I squinted, making out the letters. Grichenko said, I looked at the ring. I whispered. Grichenko nodded. I remembered the silhouette in white opposite Anna's windows. The girl who has been coming every evening for the past 3 weeks.
Maybe, I said, she's still trying to save them.
Grichenko looked at me for a long time. You've seen her, he said. Not a question, a statement. I didn't answer. He held out the ring to me. _quote, _367 _. I took the ring. It was cold. Too cold for an object that had just been in a living person's pocket. I left Grisenko's when it was already dark. Sat on a bench by the gate, lit a cigarette. The ring was in my pocket, and I felt its weight, disproportionate to its size. The phone vibrated. A message from Anna. Quote, 368, quote. I dialed her number. Ringing. More ringing. Then a voice. But not Anna's. Quiet. Female. Young. She's ready to remember, the voice said. 3 days. She's ready to remember 3 days. The connection was broken. I looked at the phone. Then at the dark street in front of me. At the end of the street, under the only working streetlight, stood figures in white. I counted 40, and one, in front of the others, slowly raised her hand, pointing at me. I don't remember how I got to the car. I only remember that I ran. The figures under the streetlight hadn't moved. They were just standing there while my hands shook as I started the engine. The rear-view mirror showed an empty street, completely empty. I drove towards Kaluga on autopilot, speeding, oblivious to the signs. The phone lay on the passenger seat, and I was afraid to touch it. The voice on the line, young, female. "She's ready to remember 3 days." Kira Dombrovskaya had died 20 years ago. I'd seen her name on the list Gritsenko had shown me. 23 years old, an older sister. The dead don't answer phone calls. The dead don't stand under streetlights. The dead don't. I slammed on the brakes. The car skidded onto the shoulder. My hands were shaking so badly I couldn't hold the steering wheel. I sat in the darkness on the empty highway, trying to breathe, rationalize, think rationally. Hallucination, stress, sleep deprivation. I'd barely slept all week, reading case files, talking to traumatized people. My mind's cracking. It's normal. It's explainable. The phone vibrated. I stared at the screen, hesitant to answer. A message from Anna. Quote 372. She opened the door before I could knock. Anna looked different. Something had changed in her face, not the expression, but the very structure, as if 20 years of tension had suddenly released, revealing something else underneath, something I couldn't read. "You saw them," she said, not a question. 40 figures, under the streetlight, one in front." I nodded silently. Anna stepped aside, letting me into the apartment. "Kira," she said. "It was Kira. She's always in front." I walked into the room. Everything was as before, the sofa, the table, the tape recorder. But the candles everywhere, dozens of candles placed all around the room. "Anna, sit." I sat. She remained standing. The candlelight played on her face, and I suddenly saw in her that 19-year-old girl who had emerged from the forest with a knife in her hand. 20 years, Anna said. For 20 years, I've only remembered what I allowed myself to remember. How Kira pulled me from the crowd, how I ran, how I woke up near the village. She went to the window, darkness beyond the glass. But in between, there are 3 days, 72 hours, and I always knew, they weren't empty, that there was something there, something I'd hidden so deep I couldn't reach it myself. What changed? Anna turned around. Kira came. She spoke slowly, and I recorded, no longer for an article, not for an investigation. I recorded because I was afraid I wouldn't believe my own memory otherwise. Anna closed her eyes. She fell silent. A candle on the table crackled. 3 opened my mouth to object. Kira returned to the clearing. A long one. A long one. Anna sat across from me. Her hands lay on her lap, motionless, calm. She looked at her palms. Anna swallowed. The candles flickered, all at once. Anna stood up, went to the table where my tape recorder lay. She picked up the recorder, turned it over in her hands. She put the recorder down. Anna stood by the window. I could only see her silhouette against the darkness. The normal life that went on while we were dying in the forest. She turned around. Anna came closer to me. She stood so close that I could smell the candle wax in her hair. Tears streamed down her cheeks, but her voice remained even. Anna shook her head. I sat motionless. The recorder captured the silence. I said finally. Anna nodded. Anna was silent. She looked me in the eye. The room swayed. Anna ran her hand across her throat. She smiled. For the first time during all our meetings, she smiled. Quote 429. I went out onto the balcony. I needed air. Kaluga was asleep. An ordinary city, an ordinary night. A car drove by somewhere below. A dog barked. Anna came out after me. Quote 430, she said. Quote 431. Quote 432. Quote 433. Anna leaned on the railing. Quote 434. She was right. I wouldn't have believed her myself. A week ago, I wouldn't have believed her. Anna looked at the sky. I turned around. Anna took my hand. Her fingers were icy. She said, Anna let go of my hand. I froze. Anna stepped back towards the door. She stopped in the doorway. Anna smiled, the same strange smile as before. She closed the balcony door. I was left alone, looking at the night city. And only then did I notice, down below on the empty street, stood a figure in white, alone. She was looking at me, and slowly nodded. I didn't sleep that night. The figure in white disappeared as soon as I blinked. Maybe she wasn't even there. Maybe I'd finally lost touch with reality, like those 40 people in the clearing who took knives and started cutting each other. In the morning, I found the address. Mark Chernetsov, Svietly Settlement, Kaluga region. A private house on the outskirts. The irony didn't escape me. The former Special Forces soldier who established a regime of total control in the community lived in a place called Svietly, bright, as if he hadn't had enough light 20 years ago. I left at dawn. The house stood on the edge of the settlement, separated from its neighbors by a high, corrugated metal fence. A new fence, a well-kept plot, a satellite dish on the roof. It didn't look like the dwelling of a broken man. I parked by the gate and got out. The camera above the gate turned towards me. "I've been expecting you," a voice said from the speaker. "Come in." The lock clicked. I pushed the gate open and entered the yard. Mark Chernetsov was sitting on the porch, a large man in his mid-50s with a short haircut, wearing a clean plaid shirt and jeans. Nothing like the wolf with dead eyes that Anna had described, just an ordinary summer resident greeting a guest. Only his hands gave him away, large with calloused knuckles, hands that knew how to inflict pain. "Sit down." He pointed to a wicker chair opposite him. "Tea? Coffee?" "No, thank you." "Suit yourself." He looked at me calmly, without hostility, studying me. "Anna said you were expecting me," I began. 20 years. Mark nodded. "I knew that sooner or later someone would come. Someone stubborn enough to dig. At first I thought it was an investigator, then a relative of one of the deceased. Turns out it's a journalist." He said the word without contempt, just stated a fact. "You know why I'm here." "I know. You want to understand what happened in the clearing, why 40 people killed each other, and why the case was classified, and why you survived." Mark smiled, a short, hard smile. "Because I didn't go into the woods. I left 2 days before the ritual." I hadn't expected that. Mark shook his head. Mark shook his head. Mark got up and went into the house. He returned a minute later with a folder, old, worn, with a faded inscription and the number blacked out. He placed the folder in front of me. Quote 480. Inside were documents, dozens of typewritten pages with handwritten notes in the margins. Quote 481. As I read, the world around me shifted. Gennady Listochkin, also known as Teacher Seraphim, was never just a lone psychiatrist. From 1989 to 1991, he worked at a closed research institute near Moscow. Officially, research into group psychotherapy. Unofficially, the development of methods of mass psychological influence. The project was funded by a special fund, supervised by people whose names were blacked out with a marker. The goal of the project: to create a model of absolute obedience. A group of people who would carry out any order on command, including self-destruction. The _quote_482_ community was a field experiment. For 5 years, Seraphim collected test subjects, selected according to psychological profile: lonely, lost, searching for meaning. He built a system of control, tested the boundaries of obedience. The ascension ritual was the final test. Mark said, I looked up from the documents. 48s looked at me, and for the first time, I saw something in his eyes besides cold, calm. He fell silent. Mark pointed to the folder. I turned it over, and below, a list. Cities, dates, names of organizations. I recognized some of them. I had read about them in the news. Mass suicides, ritual killings, cults that ended in tragedy. Mark said. He leaned towards me. He leaned towards me. Mark nodded. I spent the whole day with Mark. He told me about his life before the community, about the war, about how Seraphim found him in a psychiatric clinic and offered him a quote 499, about how easy it turned out to believe that violence was a form of love and control was care, about how he had been waking up screaming for 20 years. At his hands. When I left, at his hands. When I left, he walked me to the gate, he said. He fell silent. I got into the car. Mark was silent for a long time. He said finally. He closed the gate. I returned to Moscow 3 days later. The folder lay on the passenger seat. I made copies, 3 sets, and sent them to different places, just in case something happened to me. Anna wasn't answering her phone. On the 4th day, I drove to Kaluga, to the rented apartment where we'd been meeting. The door was unlocked. The apartment was empty. No sign that anyone had been living there. A neighbor said the woman had moved out 2 days ago, at night, with just 1 bag. I stood in the empty apartment, staring at the wall where the photographs had once hung. There was an envelope on the windowsill, my name written in handwriting. Inside, a single photograph and a note. The photograph showed a group of people in white robes. The _quote_516_ summer of 2001. I recognized Anna, so young, 16 years old, with braids and a shy smile. Next to her was an older woman who looked like her mother. In the center, a man with a kind face and empty eyes. Seraphim. And in the background, almost imperceptible, a woman with short, dark hair. She was looking directly at the camera. Kira. The note was short. Quote 517, I published everything. The article came out 2 months later, after fact-checking, consultations with lawyers, sleepless nights. I was expecting threatening phone calls, men in suits outside my building. Quote 518, quote. Nothing happened. The article was read, discussed, forgotten, the way everything is forgotten in the age of endless information overload. But I knew that somewhere, maybe in a Secret Service archive, maybe in a folder on someone's desk, my material was lying in wait, proof that Project Consensus existed, that 40 people hadn't died because they were crazy or weak. They died because someone wanted to test whether it was possible to make people kill each other, just to prove that it could be done. It could. A year has passed. I'm sitting at my desk in my apartment. Outside the window, Moscow night, 3 a.m. I don't wake up screaming at this hour anymore, but sometimes I just don't sleep. On the desk, the photograph from the envelope. 43 people in white, smiling at the camera. They don't know that in 2 months, almost all of them will be dead. I never found Anna. She disappeared, vanished like those figures under the lamplight in Malinovka. Maybe she finally found peace. Maybe she just learned to hide better. Mark sent a letter a month ago, short, __, quote _ 520 __. I don't know what he meant. I'm not sure I want to know. Investigator Gritsenko died in November, in his sleep, quietly. His daughter said that in recent weeks he had been calm for the first time in many years. And me? I look at the photograph and think about how easy it is to break a person. How simple it is to take a lonely 16-year-old girl, tell her she's special, and turn her into a tool, a victim, the sole witness. Anna survived not because she was stronger than the others. She survived because Kira, the woman who doubted, pulled her out of the crowd and pushed her into the darkness of the forest. One person who, at the last moment, chose resistance instead of obedience. That was enough. I turn off the light and go to sleep. Tomorrow will be a new day. New stories. New people looking for something to believe in. And somewhere, I know it, someone is already building a new Gates of Light. A new project. A new experiment. But now there's a record. There's a story. There are names. 40 people who are no longer here. And one 19-year-old girl who walked through the forest for 3 days, guided by the ghost of a woman named Kira. She made it out. She told the story. That's enough.